Prepare yourself for the terror. The prison of madness, where few enter and none return.
Welcome to Unsung Horrors with Lance and Erica.
Leave all your sanity behind. It can't help you now.
Welcome to Unsung Horrors, the podcast where we review underseen horror movies, specifically those with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. I'm your co-host Erica, joined by co-host Lance.
Hey, everybody.
So I know most movie podcasts usually add a disclaimer about spoilers, but I guess I just assume that if you're listening that you know that's going to happen. I guess I also don't think of it so much as spoilers, but more like promotion of a movie, especially if we like what we're talking about. So,
Right.
And plus we give like double feature recommendations at the end of our discussion. So there's even more reason to listen before you watch it if you haven't seen it yet. But anyway, spoilers are coming. And so the movie that we are going to be talking about, it is Lance's pick. So do you want to tell everyone about what we're going to be watching?
Yeah, my pick is The Flesh and The Fiends. This is the 1960 version.
Defilers of the dead. Vicious violators of the innocent. The fiendish ghouls. Two of history's most diabolic demons, selling cadavers and corpses to the sinister Dr. Knox for his forbidden experiments.
There's a lot of interpretations and adaptations of the true story that this is about. It's based on the true events known as the Burke and Hare murders, which took place in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1828. So I'm going to do something a little different this week with this movie, this pick. I'm going to jump into a quick history lesson. All right, people?
True crime time, folks.
Yes, let's do it.
I hate true crime, but we're doing it. I'm just kidding.
Let's do it old school. Pull out your spiral notebooks and take notes, because I am fascinated when it comes to like true crime and like historical fiction stuff, like whether it's like, comic books or novels or movies. So I was excited about this pick. I'm going to cover the true events of the Burke and Hare murders. And then I will do a quick summary of the differences that Flesh and Fiends presents in the movie. And then I'm sure Eric and I will get into all the different adaptations that are out there. There's a lot of interesting ones, for sure.
That's one way to describe them.
Yeah, some are good.
Some are good, for sure.
Most that I saw were bad, so we'll get into that here in a minute. But yeah, let's go over Burke and Hare. These are fascinating characters. So Flesh and the Fiends, it's based on true events, the Burke and Hare murders, which took place in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1828, which at that time, Scotland was one of the leading centers for anatomy in Europe and the entire world really. It was home to the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh, which Robert Knox was a member. Dr. Robert Knox is pretty much our main character here. At the time, by Scottish law, anatomists were only allowed to use the corpses of those who died in prison, those who had committed suicide, or the corpses of orphans. So charges in the law meant that there were fewer crimes punishable by death. And by this time, the study of anatomy had become so popular that legally sourced cadavers were getting harder to come by. So there was this financial incentive to supplying cadavers to anatomists. And soon the gap in the market led to an upsurge in grave robbers, who were also known as the resurrection men or resurrectionists. Things got so bad that some graveyards built guard towers to watch over the graves, and some families took shifts to watch over their buried loved ones, which is completely morbid.
I would take that job in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, I guess they just watched it until the bodies got to pretty much decayed past the point that they would be useful for an anatomist. So they would kind of just sit and watch, I guess, for as long as the worms ate their loved ones.
Okay.
So when these resurrection men, they were looking to sell cadavers, looking to sell fresh corpses because that earned the best money from medical facilities. And it wasn't long before grave robbing turned into murder. And then the most notorious murders for medical science were William Burke and William Hare, who over a period of 10 months in 1827 and 1828 murdered at least 16 people for the sole purpose of selling the bodies to Dr. Knox for medical research. The first body is recorded as when an elderly tenant at Hare's lodging house passed away of natural causes, and that tenant still owed Hare £4 in rent. Rather than let the corpse be buried, Burke and Hare removed it from the coffin and took it to Edinburgh University, where they were directed to Surgeon Square in the offices of Dr. Robert Knox. The surgeon was delighted, and without asking many questions, he paid the pair £7 and 10 shillings, which is approximately about $800 today. Soon the pair found their next victim, another tenant that had come down with fever and was delirious, and Hare was concerned that his lodging business would be affected. So Hare and Burke got the tenant drunk and suffocated him. Burke sat on the man's chest and upper torso while Hare held a pillow over his face. They took the body to Knox, and this time they were paid more because it was even more fresh. Over the next year, Burke and Hare murdered at least 15 more people in the same way, mostly drunks and unknowns around town, but they would get the person drunk and then they would suffocate them. The ease at which they were able to commit these acts and make their money made the pair greedy, so they continued to murder around town. Knox continued to ask little to no questions, and impressed with the freshness of the corpses provided, paid between £8 and £10 per body. And then rumors began to swirl around Burke and Hare, and many of Knox's medical students began to suspect foul play. When Burke and Hare arrived with the corpse of a well-known street entertainer, it was an 18-year-old boy named James Wilson, who was nicknamed Daft Jamie. And he was easily identifiable because he had deformed feet and he had a limp. Knox was said to deny to his students that it was the entertainer, and apparently he removed the head and other identifiable features like his feet from the body before the dissection lesson. Burke and Hare were finally arrested in November 1828 when a couple staying at Hare's lodging house found the dead body of a woman stashed in a room. The police were suspicious enough to follow up and found the corpse in the possession of Robert Knox, who stated where the body came from. Hare was offered full immunity for his confession and claimed Burke to be the sole murderer. And Hare died in obscurity, having been chased out of Edinburgh by angry mobs. Burke was sent to hang, and apparently a cheering crowd of around 25,000 people came to watch. And ironically, his body was given to medical science, and his skeleton can be seen at the Anatomical Museum of the Edinburgh Medical School.
Mm.
Yeah. And then Hare's wife, Margaret, and Burke's wife, Helen McDougall, who apparently knew and were likely involved in these murders, they were both freed, but they were chased out of Edinburgh by angry mobs. And Dr. Robert Knox, was not charged, as he did not technically commit any crimes. And Burke's statement actually exonerated him, but Knox's life and career were ruined. He was stripped of his fellowship, debarred from lecturing, and forced out of Edinburgh. He continued to practice medicine in London until his death in 1862. So something that was interesting too is there's 16 known killings across 10 months, and all these bodies were paid for by Knox. But this led to the Anatomy Act passed by the House of Lords in 1832, which allowed for the first time the donation of cadavers by families for medical research. So
Everyone donate your organs because people need it for medical science.
Yeah, make sure you have it on your identification card, your driver's license, because when you get in a wreck, it's known that they let you die so they can keep your organs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, no one's going to want mine anyway. I might treat my body like a fucking cesspool.
But that would be great to research and see what it's like.
Be like, here's what not to do to your body.
So yeah, that's kind of the quick summary and history of the Burke and Hare murders.
I had a quick question though. So I was curious about your reason for picking it for this episode, because something I read was that Burke was found guilty or convicted on Christmas Day. Is that right?
I don't know. I actually don't know that.
Okay. I thought you deliberately picked this because it's December and we're doing Christmas movies, guys. So
no, I picked it. I mean, I don't know why. It was just a random pick. I know that it took place in Scotland and it was cold at the time. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like a wintry movie.
Okay. I'm
That's as deep as I went.
I'm like 92% sure that I read that on Wikipedia. It was like Christmas Day where the jury came back and was like, yeah, fuck that guy. He's guilty.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yay. Good job,
My
Lance.
pick, yeah, just works even better. So the Flesh and the Fiends, the movie that we're talking about, is basically that's true story. John Gilling, who wrote and directed it, he kind of stuck true to all the facts. So in the movie, we follow Burke and Hare as they murder townsfolk and they sell fresh bodies to Dr. Knox. The added elements are characters of Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell, who is Dr. Knox's assistant, and a young medical student named Jackson. Each of them pretty much suspect that Burke and Hare are bringing in these dead bodies due to foul play. Jackson falls for a prostitute named Mary Patterson, who becomes one of Burke and Hare's victims, and they sell her body to Dr. Knox. When Jackson sees her body, he confronts Burke and Hare, who then murder him. Dr. Knox and his assistant, Mitchell, identify Jackson's body, and they suspect, obviously, Burke and Hare are the murderers. During that time, Burke and Hare kill Daft Jamie, who is real, and I talked about a minute ago. And Mary's friend Maggie sees the murder of Daft Jamie and alerts the police, who then arrests Burke and Hare. In the film, Burke is hung and Hare's released, but then he's immediately burned when he leaves the station. He's burned in the face with a torch by an angry mob, so to speak, causing him to go blind. And at the end, Dr. Knox is exonerated, and he walks into one of his lectures to a full house with all his students giving a standing ovation. Oh, and there's also a character involved in the story, Martha, who's Dr. Knox's niece. She has a romantic thing with Mitchell, but her character is pretty much the weak link of the film.
Yes.
It seems to be only decorative and completely unnecessary to the story. She does kind of humanize Dr. Knox's character and introduce like a high society class that he's involved in, but she's not necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, so as of this recording, The Flesh and the Fiends has 583 views on Letterboxd with a 3.3 rating. And like Erica said, if you haven't watched it yet, we're going to spoil it, which I already did. But this one's based on historical events, so there's not really much to spoil if you know the story.
Yeah.
It's hundreds of years old, or 100. It's available on YouTube. And Kino have a Blu-ray release out there that I recommend. I picked it up a couple months ago. And there are numerous cuts out there. The one that we'll be talking about is The Flesh and the Fiends. I think that's the one that's on YouTube. It has a runtime of about 93 minutes. Is that what you watched?
Mm-hmm.
Did it have nudity?
It did not have nudity. And I read somewhere that there is a continental version that has nudity in it. So I'm assuming you got to see the boobies and I didn't.
I did. I saw the boobies, and it's like full on frontal nudity and stuff. It was it's pretty hardcore nudity for 1960.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's referred to as the Continental cut or the Continental release, which is the European version. But yeah, the nudity was a full decade before it became acceptable in British distribution, I read. And the version was shot exclusively for the European market, the Continental cut.
What was I know it's called like the Continental cut, but is that then like the Fiendish Ghouls cut version?
Now the Fiendish Ghouls there's a US version of the film. The first one was Mania, which was released in 1961 in the US, and it had about 20 minutes shaved off.
Jesus.
Yeah, I watched some of the Mania one because it's on both all the versions are on the Kino.
Oh, okay.
Release. But it basically just cuts off to where Burke, when he gets the torch to the face, that's the end. It doesn't have that other cheesy ending, but we'll talk about that. And it removes all nudity. But yeah, then they removed another 10 minutes in 1964 with a new title card called Psycho Killers. It was renamed without the owner's knowledge to kind of like show in some artsy theaters.
Okay.
And then in 65, the distributor sold the US rights, and then it was released as The Fiendish Ghouls, which was, from what I read, it was still the Mania cut. So it didn't have the nudity. So the one on YouTube might just have cut scenes so they reshot a lot of the scenes that had nudity, and then they just altogether cut a lot of them. So I don't know which one is, I'm assuming it's the Flesh and the Fiends cut, just minus well, you said there was nudity, right?
No, there's no nudity in the one I watched. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe they just cut those scenes from that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I saw like you watched a version with a commentary by Tim Lucas. So does he do like because he's one of those people who does like if there's multiple cuts and versions of a movie, like he's the guy who will do the whole comparison of it. So is there like an extra feature with him doing that for this movie?
I didn't watch the Mania cut to see if there was commentary on it. The one I think it's just I'm pretty sure it's just for the original Flesh and the Fiends cut that where I watched his commentary.
Okay.
And he doesn't. I was kind of hoping he would go into like the scenes like, okay, he did say all the nudity was cut. I watched the Mania release or the Mania. I watched the Mania cut and saw how it ended, and it shaved off a good 15 minutes just from the end.
Right.
But he didn't break down the actual differences in the cut.
Slacker.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. He's very knowledgeable. He knew exactly what was going on. He had a lot to say about the actors and some of the production, but he talked a lot about earlier versions of the movie. He'll spend a good 10 minutes just while the movie's playing talking about a completely different movie, which was odd, but it was still interesting.
Yeah.
But having watched a bunch of the movies that he talked about, I was definitely interested.
Yeah.
Because I definitely went down that rabbit hole, the Burke and Hare rabbit hole.
Yeah. Because, there's, I think, 7 total movies. I mean, that are specifically about Burke and Hare or they're a heavy part of the plot at the very least, I think. And between the two of us, we've watched all of them.
Yeah, I think so.
So we can go chronologically. So let's see, 1945, The Body Snatcher. And I know you watched this. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah. So The Body Snatcher, it's based on a short story written by Robert Louis Stevenson, who's a Scottish author where all this takes place. It was directed by Robert Wise and produced by Val Lewton, but it's essentially a sequel to Flesh and the Fiends, which was really cool.
Okay.
There's characters that emulate all of them. There's Henry Daniel plays Dr. McFarlane, who's essentially the Knox character. And then Boris Karloff plays John Gray, who's a combination of Burke and Hare. But yeah, it's mentioned that McFarlane was an assistant to Dr. Knox. So there's a different time. The timeline for that movie, I think, was 1831.
Okay.
And then there's medical students under McFarlane's character who mentions Burke and Hare a lot, which set off McFarlane. So it's kind of learned that Boris Karloff, he worked with Knox, and he covered for him and Hare during the Burke and Hare trials, basically to exonerate them. And also when he murders people and he sells their body, he says he's going to Burke them, which was really cool. But The Body Snatcher I loved. It's not necessarily about Burke and Hare, but yeah, it does take a lot of the elements, and it works as a sequel, which I really loved.
Okay.
And after that is it Horror Maniacs?
Yeah, 1948 Horror Maniacs. What's the AKA on that? It's like the
Greed of William Hart.
Yeah.
So yeah, I watched there's the Horror Maniacs cut, which is a 58-minute version, and then there's the original 80-minute version, The Greed of William Hart. This was really bad. It was poorly edited. Apparently, but what's interesting is John Gilling, who wrote and directed The Flesh and the Fiends, he wrote the screenplay to this back in 1948. This was his first official screenplay that was sold for film production. But yeah, and it's just chopped up. The reason being because the British Board of Censors insisted that real names be changed. So when they recorded it, they used the real names of Burke and William Hart and Robert Knox. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have any money left to do any reshoots. So they actually got different actors to dub the new names over the soundtrack and post-production. And it creates this horribly jarring effect where you can clearly see the actors mouthing, Burke and Hare and Cox. They changed their names to Hart, Moore, and Cox, over Knox. But and they didn't have any more money to add music to the movie. It's really bad. Mm. They sliced out entire scenes. It's just poorly edited. It felt like, I don't know. It felt like like a stage play. There was no real camera movement. All the actors were kind of stationary. It was poorly lit. You can tell it was on a sound stage.
Okay.
I don't recommend this version. I wouldn't mind seeing if there's an 80-minute version, The Greed of William Hart, out there, but I couldn't find it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Todd Slaughter kind of plays the Burt character, and he's really cool. He's either Burke or Hare, but he's fun to watch.
Okay. And then after that is just straight called Burke and Hare, 1972. And you watched this one as well.
I did. This one had a great song, which is what we're going to use.
Is that the nicest thing you're going to say about this one?
Yes, there's this guy. His name was Norman Newell, I think, did the original song called Burke and Hare. And the lyrics are about Burke and Hare. We'll play it at the end of this episode because it is just annoyingly catchy and bad. He's basically just kind of yelling with an acoustic guitar at you. But this one was weird. It was very comedic. It had this weird Disney-esque like original score. There was this original score the original song that played over the credits. And then it plays once more in the movie over like a montage of them just killing people. And it's so out of place. They make everything feel like just this lighthearted comedy. But yeah, the original score, it felt like I was watching like Pete's Dragon from the 70s. It was like real cool. And I'm like, what is happening? There's all these. But yeah, it pretty much follows the same script as Flesh and Fiends. The students meet a prostitute. There's a student who meets a prostitute who's murdered and sold to Knox. And in this one, Burke and Hare's wives were like really involved, and they were pretty much planning and begging for murders to get more money. And But yeah, that one was directed by Victor Sewell, who did The Blood Beast Terror, which also stars Peter Cushing, which I found very boring. A lot like Burke and Hare. It has an interesting opening. It has a cool closing, but super boring filler.
It's a bummer. Let's see what else. There's The Doctor and the Devils, 1985.
And you watched this one, right?
I did. It's okay.
Yeah. I watched it today. I mean, the main reason I wanted to watch it was because I had read that this one was so similar to The Flesh and the Fiends.
Yeah, it was basically just watching a different actors in the same movie and in color. And that was pretty much it. And without the charisma of Peter Cushing and Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's Timothy Dalton playing the Knox character. And I love that his name is Dr. Rock, which is, I just kept hearing that damn Ween song. I don't know if you're anybody out there a Ween fan, but they have a Dr. Rock song. And whenever they said it, I just heard Ween yelling in my ear.
So I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend Doctor and the Devils. If this is the only one you can get your hands on, it's serviceable, I guess.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, they use different character names, so you don't know it's Burke and Hare, but it's the exact history of it.
Yeah.
And Twiggy's in it. She plays a prostitute.
That's right. Yeah, Twiggy's in it. Twiggy was okay in it. Yeah.
Patrick Stewart was in it too.
That's right. Patrick Stewart with hair.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if that was really. I mean, I'm sure it was.
It was comb over, but it was hair. Let's see. After that is Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, 1971. And this one is interesting. And I was actually surprised to see it come up in a list of Burke and Hare movies. And it makes sense, though, because you've got the Body Snatcher story from Robert Louis Stevenson, and you've got Dr. Jekyll by Robert Louis Stevenson. And what this movie does is it actually incorporates the story of Dr. Jekyll and Burke and Hare. So Dr. Jekyll is trying to create an elixir of life. And to do that, he needs female cadavers or corpses to extract something from there to create an elixir. And the elixir turns him into Sister Hyde. So basically, Burke and Hare are the people who are murdering and supplying him with bodies for part of the movie. They're not a big part. They're in like a third of the movie. So
are they called Burke and Hare?
Yes, they are. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting way to kind of weave those two stories together. I enjoyed the film overall, even had I not been going down the Burke and Hare rabbit hole. I thought it was still a pretty good Hammer film. So yeah, Dr. Jekyll, Sister Hyde, I'd recommend that one. And then the last one I did not watch because it's from 2010.
Yeah,
Burke and Hare.
It's called Burke and Hare, and it stars Simon Pegg as Burke and Andy Serkis, Gollum, as William Hare. Directed by John Landis. So I was interested mainly because of some of the other character actors. It also stars Tim Curry, Christopher Lee's in it. Isla Fisher plays like the prostitute. Tom Wilkinson plays Dr. Knox. But it was horrible. Yeah, and this was John. I think this is John Landis's last go at directing before he's in lockdown. I mean, I'm hoping he has one more in him, because if he ends on such a low note, it's kind of sad.
That's a bummer.
Maybe it's karma due to the whole Twilight Zone thing.
Yeah,
having a dickhead son. But this one. But this one's bad. I mean, there's some good gore, good practical effects, but it was, obviously I kind of knew it. I knew it was going to be a straight on comedy, but it just plays up everything slapstick. The murders are real comedic, pushing people downstairs, chopping down trees to destroy a horse carriage. And they try to humanize Peg's William Burke character, and it's terrible. Mm-hmm. Like, he wants to fund Isla Fisher, who's making an all-woman play of Macbeth. And he wants to get these bodies to fund it. It's really bad.
Oh God. Yikes.
Definitely don't watch that one. That was the worst of all of them. I mean, I would say Horror Maniacs is definitely worth watching before that.
Okay. Good to know. All right. So recap of all the Burke and Hare movies besides Flesh and the Fiends, which we'll get into in a minute. Body Snatcher, yes. Horror Maniacs, no. Burke and Hare, 1972, no. Doctor and the Devils, maybe. Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, yes. Burke and Hare, 2010, no.
I'd probably give Burke and Hare 72, maybe.
Maybe? Okay.
If not for that song alone.
Okay. They can just listen to the episode again and listen to the song at the end. All right, so Flesh and the Fiends.
Flesh and the Fiends, yeah. So the film stars Peter Cushing as Dr. Knox, and we all know who Peter Cushing is. I did find out, I read that this was Cushing's first non-Hammer horror film. So this was his first horror film that wasn't Hammer. All his previous horror roles were solely for Hammer: Curse of Frankenstein, Abominable Snowman, Dracula, The Mummy, Revenge of Frankenstein, and then he did Flesh and the Fiends. Cushing stated that he approached his Knox portrayal the same as his previous Frankenstein roles, which he had done 2 so far at that point.
I can absolutely see that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because I read his autobiography, which is so good. But he says in his autobiography, quote, "Now it seemed to me that Knox and Frankenstein had a lot in common. The minds of these exceptional men were driven by a single desire: to inquire into the unknown ahead of their time. Like most great scientists, their work and motives were misunderstood." There's a lot of similarities. There's even a lot of similar scenes that you can almost see Frankenstein having with like his peers and stuff, kind of down talking to him and stuff. But in this, Knox is way more class conscious, and he's like more of a snob than Cushing's Frankenstein, I think.
I agree.
Donald Pleasance, he plays William Hare, and we all know what he's done. He's 40 years old in this role, and he is fun as hell to watch.
Yeah.
He has hair.
He does.
Kind of. It's good. It's like combed from the back to the front. It's good. Then William Burke is played by George Rose. He was a character actor with small parts. He was in George Roy Hill's Hawaii and Roy Ward Baker's A Night to Remember, which is about the sinking of the Titanic. And then there's Billy Whitlaw, who plays the prostitute Mary Patterson. And she is so much fun to watch. She's like so confident in this role. Whitelaw was in The Omen. She did the voice for Agra, the Keeper of Secrets, in The Dark Crystal. She was in Hitchcock's Frenzy and in Quills with Jeffrey Rush and Kate Winslet, 2000s.
Oh, okay.
But I loved her in this role. And then there's Jim Carney, who plays Jackson. He's the medical student who Knox kind of takes under his wing, and he's also madly in love with the prostitute, Mary Patterson. Those are kind of like the main cast of characters. Other notable characters are Burke's wife, Helen, played by Renee Houston. She was in Terence Fisher's Phantom of the Opera, a Hammer production, and she was also in a couple of Roman Polanski movies, Repulsion and Cul-de-sac.
Okay, yeah.
And she would again star with Cushing in 1975 with Legend of the Werewolf. And then there's
that one.
I haven't either. It's Freddie Francis. So I wouldn't mind.
Get around to it.
You have the Hammer set, right? It's
I do. Yeah, I will definitely get to that then. Yeah.
Then there's Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell, played by Dermot Walsh. He starred in Vernon Sewell's Ghost Ship, and that director, Vernon Sewell, will go on to direct Burke and Hare in 1972.
Oof.
That's Kevin Bacon, right? That's 6 degrees, 7 degrees, whatever it's called.
6 degrees of
6 degrees
of Vernon Sewell.
Dermot Walsh, actor Dermot Walsh.
Okay.
And then June Laverick plays Dr. Knox's niece, Martha. That's probably the last we'll talk about her.
Yep.
And Melvin Hayes plays Daft Jamie. He's kind of the village idiot, so to speak. He had previously played a young Baron Frankenstein in Terence Fisher's Curse of Frankenstein. Due to his clear resemblance of a young Peter Cushing. And when I watched it again after learning that, I could see that. I do want to watch Curse of Frankenstein again to see if Daft Jamie looks a lot like Peter Cushing.
Yeah, I just watched that a couple of months ago, and I did not. Wow. Okay. Did not put that together.
And that's it. June Powell plays Maggie, who's also a prostitute, and she's Mary's friend. She's the one who notifies the police of Burke and Hare. This was her only credit that I could see. So yeah, written and directed by John Gilling. He started out as an editor and assistant director before the Second World War. Then when he came back from World War II, he wrote a bunch of successful screenplays that were picked up for film production. And that's when he started directing. And one of those screenplays was The Greed of William Hart. He did a lot of Hammer film production movies. The Shadow of the Cat, The Pirates of Blood River with Christopher Lee.
Ugh, sorry.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I saw that you did watch that.
Yeah, John liked it. I fucking hated that movie. What? No, I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. I actually it's on the Hammer set, and I already had the Blu-ray from somewhere, Kino or Twilight Time. I don't remember. And I gave it to John because I was like, I don't want this fucking movie. I'm never going to watch it again.
I hated it. You have it. Gilling also did The Plague of the Zombies.
I have half seen that. Like John was watching it and I was like in the kitchen, like doing stuff. So I would say I've seen like 75% of it because I was watching the trailer for it because I was like, oh, I'm going to watch that Plague of the Zombies before we record. And then I watched the trailer for it and I was like, I've seen this movie. And then I looked on Letterboxd and I saw John had watched it. And then he had to remind me that I didn't actually like sit down and watch it. So I've mostly seen it, but it was, from what I saw, it was good.
Cool. Yeah, I do want to see that one. He did The Reptile. He did The Mummy Shroud in 1967. And then there were two movies I did watch from him. Nightcaller from Outer Space from 1965, a.k.a. Blood Beast from Outer Space. That starred John Saxon, a very young John Saxon in his first sci-fi role. It was fun. I would recommend that one. I also watched The Gamma People from 1956. I probably wouldn't recommend that one. He also directed Bela Lugosi in 1952 with a horror comedy, Mother Riley Meets the Vampire. I just had to throw that in there because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Gillian also, like I said, he wrote a lot of screenplays. He actually wrote more screenplays than he directed. He wrote The Gorgon, the Hammer Gorgon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I loved it. With Terence Fisher directed that one. He wrote Trog, starring the great Joan Crawford.
Oh my fucking God, that movie.
Yeah. You can watch that, I think, on the Criterion Channel. And then he did write The Flesh and The Fiends. And then again, I think it's fascinating that he wrote The Greed of William Hart in 1948. Then 12 years later, He writes and directs what I think is the best adaptation and interpretation of Burke and Hare. So
Yeah.
good on him. Then the rest of the crew seem to have ties to a lot of the same British horrors and sci-fis from the 50s and 60s. There's the production team of Robert S. Baker and Monty Berman. They did The Crawling Eye, Blood of the Vampire, Grip of the Strangler, starring Boris Karloff. The composer Stanley Black, and I think the original score is good. But yeah, most of these guys just all worked on these same movies, same credits. Editor Jack Slade. The producer Monty Berman actually was a cinematographer for Flesh and Fiends. He was a cinematographer for a lot of the movies that he produced, which was interesting. And that's the cast and crew of The Flesh and the Fiends.
All right. Well, we're going to get into our thoughts about the movie and a little bit more right after this promo from our network.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal: providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.
Lance, I know you love this movie, and I know you just want to go and gush about it. I have a couple things that I definitely want to touch on with it. Mostly, I think the thing that stands out to me the most, and my favorite thing about it, is the dialogue. You probably did the same thing as me and wrote down a bunch of quotes from it.
I didn't.
You didn't? Oh, okay. Well, I wrote down
I
3.
watched it.
Actually, I wrote down 3.
Okay.
Not a bunch, but I think this is up there. I love Peter Cushing, and it's damn near impossible for me to pick favorite performances because I can watch him in anything and enjoy him in it.
Yeah.
And I think what I like so much about it is what we already kind of talked about, is how very similar he is in this role to him playing in the Hammer Frankenstein movies. This one, he's much more sort of haughty and condescending to his colleagues and very, very sharp-tongued. There's a few quotes that I want to bring up that I just fucking loved. When they're talking about you mentioned the law that was that they had in Scotland at the time, where they could only obtain cadavers or corpses from certain means. And so they're talking about the law, and they're saying, oh, why can't Parliament change the law? And Peter Cushing or Dr. Knox says something like, oh, yes, Parliament, you think with 500 walking corpses there, they could spare one. And and then when he is having a conversation with some of the other doctors about they're debating the existence of a soul. And, Peter Cushing is saying, well, I've never seen one. And the preacher is trying to argue for its existence. And just the preacher is basically saying, well, it's not something you can see. And Dr. Knox retorts with, well, I was wondering why I'd never come across one in my work. And it's and then another thing along that same lines, when they're talking about having a soul or not, someone says, oh, well, you can't see a thought. And Dr. Knox retorts by saying, yes, but try having one without a brain. I fucking love you.
That whole scene, he owned it. That reminded me of him as Frankenstein, just kind of going off on people that don't agree with his work.
Yeah.
Because he did. I remember he asked a question to that, is the feeding of worms more sacred than the pursuit of truth? Which I thought was a great.
Yes,
it's a great line.
Yeah.
And then even when he walks off, I think he has to excuse himself because he might have been paying for bodies at the end of that scene. I forgot. But
he was, yeah.
One of the guys is like, that man is doing the devil's work, and then I think one guy says, but he does it brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, he's absolutely great in this. If you love Hammer Frankenstein movies, or even just or enjoy them, you would definitely get down with this movie.
Yeah. Peter Cushing, he is definitely the star of the film, but I wouldn't say he's the center of it.
No.
I think it goes more about, it's more focused in on the Burke and Hare, dynamic, the kind of comedic, just creepy dynamic.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the other movies that we talked about, they really focus in, like the Doctor and the Devils. I feel like that does focus heavily on Dr. Knox.
Yeah, it does.
And like it talks about his wife and his sister a lot. His weird sister in that movie. That was a weird character.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. This one definitely focuses more on Burke and Hare, but I feel like as much as the movie focuses on them, I can't take my eyes off of Donald Pleasance in this. And so Burke kind of became sort of secondary to me and in the background because Donald Pleasance as Hare stands out so much in this, to me at least.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I watched this movie early in the year for the first time, and it was mainly because I was going through my Peter Cushing, like, what can I watch that's out there, and when I saw Pleasance on, in the cast, I was like, okay, this is just, it's perfect. Like this has got to be a win. And you're right. Both of them. I mean, Cushing's always captivating and steals every scene. But when Burke is, or when Pleasance's Hair is on in any scene, he's just owning it because he's kind of like he's like the Charles Manson in this movie. He's like a Charles Manson character in that he kind of forces Burke to do all the murders. He kind of, talks him into, you got to do it. She wants to go to sleep, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so psychotic, especially during a lot of these murder scenes. He just loses his mind, and it's really fun to watch.
There's one in particular. I think it's the very first one where they're suffocating the lodger.
Aggie, I think her name is.
Yeah, or the old lady. Yeah, and Donald Pleasance has like his two hands covered over his mouth, and he's like dancing back and forth while
it's terrifying. He's like, he's basically, so Burke is behind her, suffocating her, and her eyes are kind of wide open. And Donald Pleasance starts like mimicking the suffocation with this creepy dance, and it's like he's essentially holding a mirror up to her, and she's watching her own murder happen. I'm like, oh, this is terrifying. Or he's just acting like a cheerleader and like,
I think it's both. I think it works both ways for sure. So I think, he's Donald Pleasance in this. He's creepy as fuck, but also like manic and kind of goofy at the same time. It's this weird mix that totally works for me.
Yeah. He's definitely reason enough just to watch it, but I mean, there's so many reasons to watch this movie.
Yeah. I was going to ask you what you thought. I mean, I know this is 1960, and I think this works great. I think the movie looks, I mean, even for like, I watched a version on YouTube, which isn't ideal, but I still feel like something like this could have worked just as well as a colorful Hammer film.
Mm-hmm.
But I still like it as it is. But.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, just with Cushing already in the cast, that kind of screams Hammer, especially during the era. Tim Lucas did hit on that it was a decision that Gilliam wanted to make, filming this in black and white.
Mm.
I guess it was an option that was given. And he said, with the all the dark shadows that take place, because there are a lot of, cobblestone alleyways and stuff, and people are hiding in shadows, that it just seemed to work. It kind of gave it like this, how did Tim Lucas, he said it's kind of a species of a film noir, and that there's all these shadowy, oppressive, it's like a thoroughly damned universe, I think is what he said.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's kind of, it's bleak as it moves along, like a lot of noirs, but I think the only difference was that it does have kind of a good outcome, because it's all of it is good for like assisting the good of man and providing bodies to research and changes in the law later down the line. But yeah, apparently it was a conscious decision by Gilliam to shoot it in black and white.
Yeah. And even having it be in black and white, the corpses in this look fucking great.
They do. Yeah.
Like the first one they pull out of the grave by the neck, and then like a couple of the others that they bring in, and you get to see some sort of close-ups of them. They look fucking great for 1960 black and white. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great because they do show pretty much all. Well, there's not a lot of corpses, but the ones they do show and they present to Knox, they always have a good angle on it. And some, like the first corpse, like you said, is real rotted. But it's funny how every time they show the corpse, you get a look at it and it's like, ew. And they're like, drop it in the brine. And they just like dump the dead body into the brine.
It splashes everywhere. I'm like, ugh, don't get it on you.
I mean, and speaking of makeup, we need to point out Dr. Knox's eye. So this is a true story. As an infant, the real Dr. Robert Knox, he had smallpox, which destroyed his left eye, left it blind, and disfigured his face. So in this movie, there's this hooded eye makeup worn by Peter Cushing that kind of pretty much covers his left eye the entire time. It looks like his eye is pretty much shut or half shut.
Yeah.
At first, when I watched for the first time, I was like, oh, this could be like symbolism or something, like he's turning a blind eye in some regard. but when I read about it, I was like, oh, okay. He really, they only had one real working eye pretty much. And I think that's going back to all the movies we watched. It was represented in all of them except for
Doctor and the Devils.
Doctor and the Devils. Yeah, it was just a good-looking Timothy Dalton.
James Bond.
Yeah,
collecting corpses.
I don't think I want to say that the Burke and Hare 2010 didn't have it either. I think it was Tom Wilkinson that played.
What? They didn't get something right in that movie?
Yeah, like I said, he might have been missing an eye, and I just didn't care, and I was completely checked out at that point. But yeah, the makeup's good. I mean, it's very subtle. But yeah, shooting in black and white with the makeup on the dead bodies, with all the outside shots and in the alleyways and stuff, and the taverns, and then Dr. Knox's eye, it all just looked really well done for 1960.
Yeah. We kind of mentioned it earlier, how much of like a throwaway character Martha is, and I don't want to really bring her up again, but this is like my main issue with the movie is the romance subplots.
Oh yeah.
Because like Martha and Dr. Mitchell's romance seemed essentially pointless, like her being there at all. Like, yeah, you mentioned like she's a sort of bridge to his high society life, but I can see the relationship of the student Chris and the prostitute Mary being part of this, because her death is part of the climax and like what sort of the dominoes start to fall with her murder and their Burke and Hare's discovery. But I think it would have worked if like you had Dr. Mitchell and Mary have the romance and then cut out the other two. And then you have a bridge between the two classes, and you could have that murder and then have him discover it. And then that whole thing, like there just seemed to be a few too many characters that were needed.
Yeah. I could see that. Cause if you take Mitchell and Martha out of the whole script, the movie would still work.
Yeah, nothing. They don't really affect anything except to be like, I think he's buying murdered bodies, and just too many characters for me.
Yeah, I did, and I was interested in that too. So I looked a little more into the true story of Burke and Hare, and there actually was a Mary Patterson that was one of their victims.
Oh, okay.
So it said that she's said to be murdered by Burke and Hare. I guess, I mean, I don't know if that was one of the proven 16 or not. I didn't really get a deep dive into it, but I did read that when she was murdered at 18 in 1828. Mm-hmm. And she was like unfairly judged due to being a prostitute. And a lot of people were saying she deserved what she got. But in truth, she wasn't a prostitute. She was like a kitchen maid that relocated to Edinburgh. But she did take on a relationship with a medical student in real life, which I guess is the Jackson character.
Yeah.
And in real life, he got her pregnant, but he was already engaged to be married to a woman of his own social circle. So from what I read, Mary broke off the relationship, and she took up lodging at Burke's Lodge, or I guess it's Hare's Lodge, and she had a child. And then she apparently, so the character in Flesh and the Fiends kind of has. She definitely plays. She's very. She plays the spider, and Jackson plays the fucking fly. Like, yeah. She knows exactly what she's doing, but she has kind of like this weird. I'm not going to say she's bipolar or anything, but she has these weird reactions. She she loves him, but then she degrades him in front of her, her friends when he comes to get her. But in real life, this Mary Patterson, I'd read she entered an asylum, and then when she was released, she went back to the lodge where both Burke and Hare were staying and living, and then she was murdered like weeks later. And then the character Maggie, who actually sees Daft Jamie murdered, and she's a friend of Mary's. She's based on a real life woman named Janet Brown, who reported that she saw her friend in the company of Burke and Hare the last time she was alive.
Okay.
So maybe that was just Gilling trying to add as many real elements. But like you said, I mean, I don't think it was necessary. I don't think it helped the film.
No,
That was my
that's
Mary
right.
Patterson little. Yeah, I was talking about the real characters and William Hare. So nobody actually knows what happened to William Hare when he was released. And one rumor is that he fell into a lime pit and was blinded, which I think Gilling kind of played on and did that whole thing, blind him with a torch in the face.
Yeah.
But there's like not sufficient. There's no historians think that actually happened. Like he fell into a lime pit.
They did that in the Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, actually. Burke was hanged, and then Hare was chased by an angry mob and thrown into a lime pit. And that was like the last we saw of both of them. And that was like halfway through the movie.
Yeah, see, apparently those are the rumors. A lot of people think that maybe he was just like run out and lynched, but nobody really knows what happened to him.
He could still be out there, people.
So another murder scene, we had talked about whatever her name was, Aggie being murdered and suffocated. The Daft Jamie murder scene I thought was super just kind of tense and terrifying. Like he shows up at Burke and Hare, I think he's gonna give him a ring because he took it off of a body. And he's outside, and there's like this pig pen outside of Burke and Hare's lodging. And he goes inside, and then they just kind of attack him. And he's the only one that's ever really fought back. And it's super tense. You know, they try and suffocate him, hold him down, and he busts out. And he actually runs outside and into the pig pen where they hold him down and suffocate his face in the mud. There was a funny in the commentary by Tim Lucas. He did have a story. Melvin Hayes, the actor that played Daft Jamie, said that murder scene was filmed in the late afternoon, and he was completely pissed about it because the pigs were there all day, and that pig pen was just filled with pig shit.
Oh,
So he really got his face in the shit, and like it was all there.
yikes.
But yeah, the ending of The Flesh and the Fiends.
Yeah. So which version? This got cut from the Mania version, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. I'm going to read a quick a snippet from a Letterboxd review about the ending. I'm not going to say what I think about it yet, but I'm just going to read this really quick. And I don't remember who it was from, but okay. So this Letterboxd reviewer said, the ending is the only real fault for me, as Burke and Hare received their just desserts, while the complicit and arguably more insidious Dr. Knox gets away with a slap on the wrist. Sure, he is presented as seeing the error of his ego and is supposedly a new and better man, but I really don't buy it. The film needs to take a harsher stand on his poor ethics, but seems content to let things come to a tidy conclusion. Hard disagree with that. He made his, he had his short speech about like, oh, I do believe in this now, and I see that what I did, I see what was wrong with what I did, but I don't think he ever actually says what I did was wrong. And I don't think what he did was wrong because he is doing it for the purpose of science. Like he is trying to better humanity overall at the sacrifice of some people. Now, granted, this is coming from a person, me, who does not like people in general. And so if I say like, oh yeah, a few people got murdered, but guess what? Now we've got this new law in place that allows anatomists and medical teaching colleges to get more access to cadavers, to better understand the human body, to come up with cures for more diseases, and for all of us to have better health. I think it's a win in the end.
Right.
I think the applause that he got from all of his students in the very end, well deserved.
Yeah, I'm indifferent on the ending. So I liked it. The first time I watched it, I just loved this film. I mean, I thought it was close to perfect. But watching it again recently, the ending was the only thing that did kind of bugged me. It just I wasn't a fan as much this time. Mainly because they did make him a hero, which I agree. I do think what he did was, in the name of pushing forward the medical field, and it led to the Anatomy Act and the donor cards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I liked how in the end, there was a mob outside his house that had been there for a while. He was exonerated. He's all unshaved. His vanity is pretty much gone. He is a new person. And then I do think that like the applauding students, they represent the medical profession of tomorrow. Like, oh yeah, here he is, boom, boom, boom. But
Yes.
I love the movie. First off, I do want to watch when I watched and kind of went through the Mania cut. I want the Mania cut to have the nudity in it. Keep all the nudity, but I want to watch it then without that ending because I know the Mania cut ends as soon as the torch is going up into Hare's face.
Yeah.
The end pops up. You don't even see his burned eyes. You hear him yell, and then that's the end.
Yeah.
Which I think is intriguing. And it's, at that point, you've already seen Burke hang, and then we just kind of want to see this. And then it's kind of what really happens to Knox. I mean, in real life, he is, disbarred and he goes to London, and he's definitely not considered a hero.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, he is. So I think that is what Gilling was going for, and I totally get it.
Okay, so here's what we do. We take Mania, add the nudity back in, right? And
100%.
and then it ends with Donald Pleasance getting his eyes burned out, right?
Uh-huh.
If it's going to end with fire, then this new cut's got to be called the Hammer Cut. Copyright Unsung Horrors. That's the Hammer Cut.
Seriously, because that is how everything's either catches on fire or there's just fire on the end.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can see, like, yeah, I love a downbeat ending. So I would have been fine if it ended right there as well. But I don't have a problem with the ending with Peter Cushing because I'm like, no, he's the good guy in all of this. Like, yeah, he took bodies, but for fucking science. And I will always, be on the side of science.
Right.
Well,
No, I agree.
Always.
And I do think it does, it helps establish him as the star. Like, I bet Peter Cushing hated the Mania cut. If he ever saw it, like, he's probably like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, I hope he never did.
Probably not. It was in the U.S. and
Yeah.
probably just played in a couple of theaters.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, you said you loved it. What did you end up giving this on Letterboxd?
I gave it 4 stars. The first time I watched it, I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. And I was blown away by it. Then going down this rabbit hole, looking at all the historical events that kind of built all these adaptations out there. I guess the next time I watched it, I was more like, okay, let's see how factual they got, which is probably the wrong thing when you're watching a horror thriller.
Yeah.
But 4 stars, I think, it's still a damn great film.
Yeah. All right. And then what would be your pick for a double feature with this movie?
I would have to give it to The Body Snatcher, 1945, the one with Karloff and Lugosi. You have 2 horror pros in The Flesh and the Fiends with Cushing and Pleasance. So let's go with 2 horror pros, Karloff and Lugosi, in The Body Snatcher. And it's set up perfectly like a sequel. Like, you can watch Flesh and the Fiends, follow it up with The Body Snatcher, and then it'll all mold together. There'll be callbacks to Dr. Knox, to the Burke and Hare characters. Do that.
Nice.
What about you?
So I love this as well. I gave it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. I've already kind of said my issues with like the romantic subplot with it. I really enjoyed it. And even though I didn't watch as many of the Burke and Hare versions as Lance did, the couple that I saw, or the one true one I saw, The Doctor and the Devil, is not great. I think I'm definitely going to watch The Body Snatcher as a follow-up to this. So yeah, 3.5 stars, really liked it. Definitely would recommend it. My double feature. All right. So originally I was thinking I'm just going to do like a true crime double feature and do a movie like a Jack the Ripper movie. So I was like, maybe I'll do like The Lodger, 1944. Or even originally I was even thinking like Hitchcock, 1927 one, but I haven't actually seen that one. I feel like, two movies that close together might not work. So I went in a completely different direction. My theme for my double feature is This Body's for You, and I would pair it with Hellraiser.
Oh, damn.
Julia's snatching up bodies for Frank.
There you go. That works.
So yeah,
That's a good one.
Flesh and the Fiends and Hellraiser for my double feature.
Would you end it? Is there any watch order, or is it just whatever?
I feel like I feel like Hellraiser would have to be second.
Yeah, you have to end with that.
Yeah, I love that movie so much. So
this is going to be your double feature pick. Just moving on. I went a completely different direction here, Lance. I picked Hellraiser. That makes sense, though. That's a good one.
I'm looking forward though to watching The Body Snatcher. Though it's actually I added it to my watch list. I'm going to try and watch it this weekend. So
it's good. It's real short too, from what I remember.
Even better, because I'm just trying to squeeze in 90 minutes and under through the end of the year. Because folks, I am close to hitting 1,000 movies for the year. I'm in like 920s right now, and it's December 3rd. Yeah, it's going to happen.
My numbers are inflated because, like, during Fantastic Fest, I logged all my shorts and stuff. So
cheater.
I know, but they're on Letterboxd, so boom.
That's true. Fair
but
enough.
I don't do like TV series and stuff, except for Twin Peaks: The Return. 5 stars, baby.
Yeah, all you folks who log Tiger King on Letterboxd, bunch of fucking cheaters.
Oh, I might have logged.
God damn it, Lance!
I didn't rate it or anything. I think I just logged it.
Fine.
I think that was my first 2020. Was it a 2020 release?
I think that was last year.
It's got to be.
I think that was before COVID hit. Maybe it was early 2020. I don't even know. This year has been like 8 years long, so it's hard to know. All right. So that's it for The Flesh and the Fiends. You can check out some of the other Birkenhair versions that we mentioned, as well as our double feature recommendations. And also, if you haven't seen Flesh and the Fiends yet, it is technically Christmas adjacent because, Burke was convicted on Christmas Day.
That's why I picked it.
Yeah. So our next episode is going to come out the week of Christmas, and we are going to be doing a Christmas horror movie. It is my pick. We are going to be doing The Oracle from 1985. And everyone listening is probably scratching their head right now about it, but you have a chance to watch it. It is available to watch on YouTube. It is directed by Roberta Findlay, who we will be talking about next episode as well. She is a very interesting and wonderful character in the world of New York cinema. So The Oracle takes place during the holidays. Specifically, it starts on Christmas Eve and goes through New Year's. And it's about a woman who moves into an apartment. She takes possession of the former tenant's, we'll call it planchette setup, because they did not have the money to pay the rights to have a Ouija board in this movie. So instead, they have a different kind of planchette to communicate with spirits. So this woman who moves in is communicating with the spirit of a man who has been murdered. His assailants are out to stop her from finding out the truth. This movie is very low budget. It has very cheesy acting, but it has this earnestness about it. And it has this layer of late 70s, early 80s griminess, especially like that sort of New York 42nd Street feel to it. It's got dime store special effects, which are, I think, endearing, and it has some fantastic side characters. So Like I mentioned, there is, you can watch it on YouTube. It's a decent copy on there. There's also a Shriek Show DVD out there in the universe, which I have and I'll be watching. So The Oracle, 1985 for the next episode.
Nice.
All right. If you are not already, please give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors. You can follow me on Letterboxd under the username Also Watched, and you can also follow my other podcast, Customers Also Watched, on Twitter at CAW Podcast or Facebook or Instagram under Customers Also Watched. And Lance, where can people follow you?
I'm at El Shaibi at Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
All right. That's it for this episode, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks for The Oracle. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
In the land of Bonnie Scotland, it's not so bonny today. Corpses go on disappearing as they get stolen away. Watch out! Don't let them catch you or you'll end up on a slab. Body's been a healthy pound or two in and out and on a certain lab. Back and out, beware of them. Back and out, the pair of them out to snatch your body from you. Back and out, all out to you. Back and out, won't stop until they get rich from picking up all the bodies in the dead of night. They'll find you, we're behind you. Better keep out of sight. Back and out, beware of them. Back and out, the pair of them out to snatch your body from you. Burke is fur and always over sex. He likes bodies in bed. Hal is dark and grim and over vexed. He likes bodies when dead. Take care, they're out to rape you. They're out to drape you in white. If you see them coming after you, turn around and take flight. Back and out, beware of them. Back and out, the pair of them out to snatch your body from out to snatch your body from out to snatch your body from out to snatch.